When people tell me everything feels pointless, they usually say it in a whisper, as if they were confessing a terrible sin. Alan, I don't see the point anymore. I wake up, I work, I eat, I scroll through other people's lives. I go to bed, and I can't shake the feeling that none of it really matters. Perhaps you know that feeling quite well. The things that used to excite you now look like cardboard props on a stage whose story you no longer believe. My name is Alan Watts, and for most of my life I've been accused of being a philosopher of joy. People hear my laughter in old recordings and imagine that I must have found the secret to feeling good all the time. What they don't always realize is that a great deal of my interest in consciousness and awakening came from staring directly into this very sense of pointlessness. Long before smartphones and social media, people were already writing to me saying, I have everything I thought I wanted, and yet life feels strangely empty. The costumes have changed, but the ache is the same. What I want to suggest to you is rather unsettling at first. When everything feels pointless, it may be because you are finally seeing something true. Not that life itself has no meaning, but that the kind of meaning you were taught to chase was always fragile, always secondhand. The feeling that the game is rigged is not a malfunction. It is the beginning of waking up from a dream about who you are and what you are here for. We were raised on a particular story, that life is a ladder of purposes to be achieved. You must become someone, prove something, leave a mark. You labor under this story for years, and if you are diligent or fortunate, you may reach some of its milestones, a career, a family, a shiny collection of experiences. But then, one day, you look around and ask, is this it? Is this the grand meaning I was promised? When the answer appears to be no, the old motivation collapses. This collapse feels like despair, yet from another angle, it is a tremendous opportunity. For when the false purpose falls apart, there is a chance to discover a deeper one that does not depend on being a particular kind of success in the eyes of the world. The central principle I want to explore is this. Life does not become meaningful when you add some grand purpose on top of it, like icing on a cake. Life is meaningful in its very being, in the simple fact that there is awareness of anything at all. You do not have to manufacture meaning. You have to notice that you are part of a living process which is already expressing itself as you. Awakening, then, is not discovering a new purpose outside yourself, but waking up to the fact that you are the universe playing a particular game of form and experience. I did not discover this from a comfortable armchair of speculation. I discovered it by trying, quite sincerely, to live up to borrowed meanings and finding that they slipped through my fingers. I tried to be the good boy, the dutiful student of religion, the serious spiritual practitioner, the respected lecturer. Each role brought a certain satisfaction, but also a strange hollowness, as if I were reciting lines in a play without quite believing them. I would reach the end of a talk or a day full of errands and feel an odd question rise up. For whom am I doing all this? There are, as I see it, three particularly destructive ways we deal with this question when it surfaces. The first is what we might call the way of distraction. You sense the emptiness, and at once you run from it into noise, entertainment, consumption, endless activity. You fill every gap in the day with something to look at, something to achieve, as if the slightest silence might expose a terrifying truth. The result is a life packed with events, but thin on presence. You are always going through experiences, yet rarely in them. The second way is the way of grim duty. Here you decide that feelings of meaning are childish and must be set aside. Life, you say, is simply work, responsibility, survival. You tighten your jaw and push on. You may become very efficient, very reliable, even admired for your discipline. But inside, there is a sense of having betrayed something vital. You may lie awake at night with the vague impression that you have lost your own life while busily maintaining it. The third way is the spiritual detour. You sense the pointlessness of ordinary goals and run instead into lofty ideas about enlightenment, cosmic missions, saving humanity. You collect teachings and practices the way others collect gadgets. Awakening becomes a kind of ultimate achievement, a golden trophy that will finally make it all worthwhile. Yet this is simply the first two strategies wearing mystical clothing: distraction by spiritual novelty and duty to a grand abstract mission. In both cases, you avoid the real question: who is this I that demands a purpose? And why does it feel so exiled from the simple fact of being alive? The secret, if we must use that overworked word, is disarmingly plain. The search for meaning becomes frantic and painful when you imagine yourself as a separate little ego, dropped into a vast and indifferent universe, tasked with justifying its own existence. From that standpoint, of course, everything feels precarious. You must prove your worth with achievements or spiritual badges, or else sink into insignificance. Awakening is the soft but revolutionary recognition that this separate somebody is a useful story, not your true identity. You are not a stranger visiting the universe. You are the universe visiting itself as this moment, this body, this particular dance of joys and sorrows. Let me make this more human by telling you about a man named Daniel. He was in his early 30s when I met him, a software engineer in a city of glass towers and glowing screens. By every external measure, he was doing well. Stable job, clean apartment, friends to meet on weekends, enough money to travel when he wished. Yet when he sat down with me after a talk, he spoke with the quiet horror of someone who has just realized that the treasure he has been hunting is made of cardboard. "Alan," he said, "I think I've broken something inside myself. I don't care about any of it anymore. Not the promotions, not the new phones, not even the trips. I go to work, I come home, I play games or scroll, and I feel like I'm just filling time until I die. I don't want to hurt myself or anything like that, but I honestly can't see the point. What's the game here?" I asked him to describe an ordinary day. He painted it in muted colors: the rush hour train full of blank faces, the open plan office where people spoke in project deadlines and metrics, the lunch breaks where conversation revolved around shows, investments, and weekend plans. He wasn't actively miserable. He was simply unconvinced. The world seemed like a machine going through motions, and he, a small cog that occasionally received a treat for spinning faster. "Did you ever have a time," I asked, "when things didn't feel pointless?" He thought for a moment. "When I was a kid," he said, "I used to get completely lost in building worlds with Legos, drawing, playing outside. None of it had a purpose. Nobody was going to pay me for it, but it felt full. Now everything I do feels like it's for something else. Build your portfolio, build your network, build your future. I'm starting to suspect the future never actually arrives." "You're quite right," I said. "The future is a marvelous invention that never appears as such. It only ever shows up as this, as now, wearing different costumes." He sighed. "So what do I do with this?" I tried getting into spirituality. I read books on awakening, watched videos about consciousness, even went on a silent retreat. It all sounds very profound, but I can't tell if anything actually changes. I still wake up and think, all right, another day of pretending this matters. I told him that his problem was not that he was failing to awaken, but that he had smuggled his old idea of meaning into his spiritual search. "You are still hoping," I said, "for some grand badge that will finally make your life worthwhile. You want awakening to be the ultimate Lego set, the final project that justifies all your effort." He laughed bitterly. "So even my search for meaning is pointless." "Not pointless," I replied, "but misdirected. You are looking for meaning as something added on to life, like a sticker that says, 'Approved.' What if meaning is not a thing to be obtained, but a way of seeing? What if the point is not something out in front of you, but the fact that anything is happening at all?" He looked skeptical, as anyone sensible would. So I suggested a small experiment. "For the next week," I said, "once a day take 10 minutes to do something completely purposeless, in the best sense of the word. Not productive, not self-improving, not impressive. It could be doodling nonsense, listening to the rain, watching people in a park, like playing with a pet. The only rule is that you do it for its own sake, not as a means toward anything. While you do this, notice how your mind objects. It will say, "This is wasting time, this is stupid, this isn't getting you anywhere." Let those voices chatter and keep going. Then see how you feel. He promised to try, though his expression suggested he expected nothing. People rarely expect much from such simple instructions. We have been trained to demand complexity. A week later he wrote to me. "I did what you said," the letter began, with an air of reluctant confession. He had spent 10 minutes each evening sitting on his balcony, simply watching the sky darken and the lights come on in neighboring buildings. At first his mind shouted at him, "You should be doing something useful. There's a course you could be taking, a side hustle you could be building." But because the experiment was limited to 10 minutes, he could afford to ignore the inner supervisor. Around the fourth night, something subtle shifted. He noticed the way one particular tree outside his window moved in the wind, the way the colors of the sunset changed moment to moment. He felt, for a brief instant, the odd sensation that he was not a separate observer looking out at the world, but part of the same unfolding like a wave watching other waves. The feeling vanished as soon as he tried to analyze it, but it left a faint afterglow. "Nothing dramatic happened," he wrote, "but those 10 minutes felt more real than most of my day. There was no goal, but somehow it didn't feel pointless. It felt enough. I don't know what to make of that." Marcel, what was happening to Daniel was the beginning of a reorientation. He was discovering meaning not as a grand narrative, but as immediate presence. The point of those 10 minutes was not to accomplish anything, but to reveal that life, when fully attended to, is already complete in each instant. This is the flavor of awakening in everyday clothes. If Daniel's story is a gentle nudge, the next one is more of an earthquake. Her name was Maria, a nurse in her late 40s who had spent most of her adult life caring for others. She came to me not with the quiet boredom of pointlessness, but with a despair so heavy it was hard for her to sit upright. "Everything feels like a cruel joke," she said. "I've seen people die on hospital beds, I've seen good people lose everything, and I can't convince myself anymore that there's some plan, some fairness. I used to go to church and take comfort in the idea that God had a purpose. Now that story has fallen apart. When I look at the world, the suffering, the chaos, the absurdity, it all seems utterly meaningless. And then I look at my own life, work, home, sleep, repeat. I love my children, but I'm so tired I feel like a ghost walking through their days. I don't know how to keep going." I did not try to rescue her with pleasant slogans. Instead, I asked whether there was ever a moment, even a small one, when the feeling of pointlessness loosened its grip. She thought for a long time. "Sometimes," she said slowly, "when I'm holding a patient's hand and we're both just quiet, or when I'm washing dishes and I suddenly notice the warmth of the water. There's no big insight, but for a second I'm not weighed down by questions. Then the heaviness comes back. Those moments," I said, "are not as trivial as they seem. They are cracks in the armor of your story about life. The story says, 'This is all meaningless.' The moment says, 'Here is a hand, warm water, breath moving in and out.' The story is loud and dramatic. The moment is quiet, almost shy. Awakening is learning to trust the quiet, more than the story." She shook her head. "That sounds beautiful, but when the weight hits me, it doesn't feel like a story. It feels like the truth." "Of course," I replied. "Any story believed feels like truth. That is its nature. So let us not attack the story head on. Instead, I want you to try something for the next 30 days. Not to fix your life, but to relate differently to this sense of pointlessness." I suggested a simple practice. Each evening, after her shift and after the children were asleep, she would sit for 15 minutes in a chair by the window. During that time, she was not to search for meaning, recite affirmations, or analyze her problems. Her task was to feel, as fully as possible, whatever sense of emptiness or futility was present, without labeling it wrong, and without trying to distract herself. When the thought appears, "This is meaningless," I said. Do not argue with it or agree with it. Simply notice, there is the thought of meaninglessness. Then bring your attention back to the raw sensations in your body, the heaviness, the tightness, the ache. These sensations are real. The interpretation you attach to them is optional. Let the feelings be like weather passing through the sky. You are not trying to get rid of them. You are learning to be the sky. She grimaced. So I just sit and feel awful? Not quite, I said. You sit and feel without adding the word awful on top. You may discover that what you have been calling awful is actually a mixture of sadness, fatigue, fear, perhaps even tenderness. It is more textured than the blunt label suggests. And you may find not immediately, but over time that there is an awareness in which these waves rise and fall, and that awareness is oddly untouched by them. That awareness is what I mean by consciousness. Awakening is recognizing yourself as that, not as the waves alone. She agreed to try, mostly because she had run out of other ideas. The first nights were difficult. Sitting in the quiet, she felt as though she were drowning in a black ocean. Memories of patients who had died, of arguments with her ex-husband, of financial worries, all surged up demanding attention. Her instinct was to flee into television or chores. But the frame of only 15 minutes gave her just enough courage to stay. Around the third week, something unexpected occurred. She was sitting in her usual chair, feeling the familiar heaviness in her chest, when suddenly she noticed the sound of rain on the window with unusual clarity. For a brief moment, the sense of me and my pointless life receded, and there was simply the sound, the coolness of the air on her skin, the rise and fall of breath. There was no answer, no cosmic explanation, yet the moment did not feel empty. It felt strangely complete, as if nothing were missing, even though all her problems remained unsolved. The experience passed quickly, but it left a trace. Over the remaining days, similar flashes arose, holding a patient's hand and feeling fully present, watching her son sleep and sensing a quiet reverence, washing dishes, and actually enjoying the warmth of the water. The story of pointlessness still visited her, but it no longer felt like the final word. There was another, softer current running beneath it. At the end of 30 days, she wrote that she no longer believed in a grand plan that would make sense of every tragedy. But she also no longer believed that meaningless was an adequate description of existence. I think, she said, I was demanding that life justify itself to my mind. When it failed to provide a satisfying answer, I called it pointless. Now I'm starting to see that life is the answer, and my questions are just tiny ripples on its surface. Here, in these two stories, we glimpse the heart of the matter. When everything feels pointless, the temptation is to demand a new idea that will re-enchant the same old point of view. We want a better story for the same separate self. Awakening invites something more radical, a shift in identity from the character to the consciousness in which the character appears. From that perspective, the question, "What is the point?" begins to lose its teeth. Because the point is not out there in the future, it is here, as this living, breathing moment. Spiritually speaking, you could say that you are not a person trying to become conscious. You are consciousness trying on the costume of a person. Your boredom, your despair, your laughter, your confusion, all of these are ways the universe experiences itself from a particular angle. When you see this not merely as a comforting notion, but as a felt reality, something profound changes. The pressure to justify your existence eases. You are no longer an employee of life, required to produce meaning as part of your job description. You are a dancer in a dance that is already complete in every step, even the missteps. The limiting belief that keeps the sense of pointlessness in place is the belief that meaning must be given to you from the outside by society, by religion, by success, and that without such a stamp of approval, your life is a blank page. The empowering recognition is that meaning arises whenever you are fully present with what is, without demanding that it be otherwise. Washing a dish, listening to a friend, feeling your own heartbeat in the dark. These are not waiting rooms for real life. They are the very scene in which life reveals itself. This does not mean you must abandon your ambitions or responsibilities. On the contrary, when you act from this deeper sense of being, your actions often become more precise and compassionate. You are no longer driven solely by the fear of being insignificant. You participate in the world as one expression of a vast, interconnected process, not as a desperate outsider trying to force significance upon a meaningless stage. In the modern world, the question of pointlessness is especially acute. We live amid more information, more options, more constant stimulation than almost any humans before us. You can see, within seconds, countless examples of other people's achievements, adventures, and spiritual experiences. The result is that your own life, viewed through this funhouse mirror, can seem unbearably small and dull. Yet the principles we have been discussing are as relevant now as ever. The invitation is the same as it was in quieter ages: to turn from the ceaseless search for meaning out there and bring gentle attention to the simple fact that you are conscious right now. To notice that thoughts about meaning and meaninglessness come and go, but the awareness in which they appear has been quietly present through every chapter of your life. To experiment with small acts of purposeless presence and see whether, in those moments, the question, "What's the point?" relaxes its grip. So what can you do, practically speaking, when everything feels pointless? You cannot force yourself to believe comforting stories you no longer trust. You cannot manufacture passion on command, but you can experiment with a new way of meeting your own experience. Here is a simple 7-step practice you can try daily. First, sit down somewhere relatively quiet and set a timer for 10 minutes. Second, say softly to yourself, "Right now, everything feels pointless," or whatever phrase fits your experience. Let it be honest, without drama. Third, close your eyes and bring attention to your body. Notice where the sense of pointlessness lives, perhaps as heaviness in the chest, dullness behind the eyes, tension in the shoulders. Fourth, allow these sensations to be exactly as they are for the full 10 minutes. Do not try to fix them, improve them, or explain them. When everything feels pointless, the mind wants one thing: a guarantee. It wants to know, before it dares to relax, that life will turn out well, that your efforts will be rewarded, that someone, somewhere, will stamp your existence with approval. Awakening offers no such guarantee. What it offers instead is something far more intimate and strangely more trustworthy: the direct taste of being alive here and now, without conditions. If this conversation has stirred something in you, a question, a resistance, a small flicker of recognition, treat that as your starting point. You do not need to feel inspired or high for awakening to be happening. Sometimes it begins exactly as a tired voice in you that says, "I cannot keep pretending this old game is enough." From there, the smallest willingness to sit, to feel, to be present without a script, can open into an entirely different way of experiencing your life. Before you disappear back into your day, I would like to hear from you. Ask yourself, where does this sense that everything feels pointless show up most strongly for you right now in your work, your relationships, your spiritual search, or those quiet moments alone at night? Share that in the comments, not as a confession of failure, but as a way of saying, "This is honestly where I am." You may discover that many others are standing in the same fog, and your honesty might be the light they need to see their own path a little more clearly. If this talk has given you even a small shift of perspective, consider staying with us on this exploration. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next mind shift we dive into together. Give this video a like if it resonated with you, and share it with someone who might be quietly wondering what to do when their own life starts to feel pointless. As we close, you'll see 2 other videos appearing on your screen, each one a different doorway into the same mystery of consciousness and awakening. Choose whichever one calls to you and let the journey continue. Thank you for lending your ears, your attention, and your honest confusion to this conversation. May you come to see that even in the moments that feel most empty, you are already part of the great dance you have been searching for.